video is a picture tour of my rocket collection as of January 2012. Grab some popcorn. The Alpha is the first rocket I built from a starter set back in 1975 when I was 14. It has not been restored yet and has not flown recently. Next, I built the EAC Viper. I added the orange payload section to fly with an altimeter and finished it to keep it in the spirit of Estes. EAC stands for Estes Aerospace Club. It was a popular kit made for club members only. I also have an unrestored twin for this with blue and red trim built by my brother. It's a good economical rocket that uses mini motors and it flies well even in winds, although it's limited to about 200 feet with its small motor. My fourth rocket was the X-Ray, my flagship rocket back in '75, and it was my first payload with a clear tube. It's flown a lot and it shows its age. It also hasn't been restored yet, but was my big rocket back then for the first few years. The Beta is a favorite rocket of mine, my fifth rocket and the first two-stage rocket. It uses economical T-motors, very important to a non-working 15-year-old. I added an altimeter bay to this, and since Estes recently reintroduced the booster motor, it flies again. To my surprise, it's capable of flying over 700 feet on A motors. The Mosquito is a tiny rocket from 1976, less than 4 inches tall. I didn't know better and painted it olive and black, the only paint I had around. I learned that the camouflage-like colors makes it very difficult to see in the grass, and it's too small and fast to see in the air, so I rarely fly it these days. The FIRECAT was a limited edition special with a great design style. Unfortunately, the left fin and rudder was broke off and lost in storage, and this beauty has not been restored yet. The Aero High was another old favorite using mini motors. I liked its stock look, but I wanted to add the yellow altimeter section to this. My brother built a green twin for this, and that hasn't been restored yet. It can go about 300 feet with the small A motors. The Sprint, or the Astron Sprint from 1977, is a high-performance rocket for altitude competitions. The boat tail is its unique drag-reducing feature. I added the yellow altimeter payload section to this, and I think it actually looks better this way. I have flown this to 1,200 feet and on a B motor to 117 miles per hour so far. The Nike X may be my all-time favorite design. My first big rocket back in 1977. Classic black and white paint scheme and a simulated booster stage. To this I added the altimeter section and a thin mill nylon parachute. It flies well and the liftoff is nice, not too fast but not too slow. It will reach 400 feet or so and 83 miles per hour. But I wish I could put a larger motor in this rocket. I may just build an upscale of this. The Bandit was even larger than the Nike X and became my new flagship for '77. The kit included a payload section which I used for science fair experiments back then. It also had a unique, for Estes, ejection baffle to cool the gases before melting the plastic parachute. Unfortunately, it came down hard last year and the engine mount and baffle was damaged. More fortunately, I rebuilt it with a larger mount and baffle for D and E engines, hence the name is now Bandit 2. It also has a nylon parachute and can reach about 1,000 feet on a D engine, maybe even close to 2,000 on an E if I dare try it. The Big Bertha is a classic that was built by my brother back in the '70s. The swept back fins and old paint scheme is still here. I've restored and flew it, but since adding the altimeter payload and nylon parachute, it's now quite heavy and struggles to pass 300 feet. With its longer length and recent upgrade to a D motor mount, We'll call it the slightly bigger Bertha. It has a nice slow liftoff, but with the D motor, I hope to send it way up there this summer. The Renegade is not the tallest, but certainly the heaviest rocket in my current fleet. It was also built by my brother back in the 70s. It's impressive not because of its technology, but its sheer size. As usual, I've added the altimeter payload and confirmed that it will reach 500 feet. It flies pretty well and is a powerful rocket. I might try to send it beyond 1,000 feet using a composite E motor this summer. The new Vector Force. As a born-again Rocketeer, this was my first new build in 2010 and it turned out great. Another new flagship. This rocket has through-the-wall fins and it is tall. It has the altimeter payload section on the top, and below that is a second payload section that can house a beeper, so I can find it in the grass. This is the only rocket I've flown so far on a composite propellant motor, and she thundered off the launch pad to over 1,100 feet. Next, I assembled the almost ready to fly Cyclone, part of a Quest starter pack I got for parts on eBay. The plastic fins and body wrap sticker meant no balsa fins and no painting, so I don't really consider this a real rocket. Still, it does fly pretty well, very similar in performance to an Alpha. The Gamma Ray was my first Quest rocket kit, featuring a translucent red payload tube. I used metallic red paint to go with the silver trim for a really snappy finish. This rocket has flown over 800 feet at 98 miles per hour. A good flyer. This pretty gem is a very high-performance machine. It is thinner and lighter than the Sprint and outperforms the Sprint on the same size motor. The thin fins are made of cardboard, and there are 5 of them. I added the orange altimeter section and will try to fly it beyond 1,300 feet this summer. The Mylar streamer it uses allows it to fall at a fast 20 miles per hour to keep it from getting lost. It is very, very fast on takeoff, reaching 123 miles per hour just on a B6 motor. The Ricochet is a well-styled rocket, and I used metallic blue paint on it. It's tallish, but lightweight and includes a payload section in its original design. I've flown it beyond 750 feet. For low-power rocketry, it's a great mid-sized rocket. The Andromeda. 32 years on the workbench. I started it in 1978, I think, and I didn't finish it until last year. It's my tallest rocket at just over 44 inches. It definitely gets noticed. It was a classic original from Estes, but is somewhat rare to see today. Flies good in low winds, nice slow liftoff, up to about 300 feet. The X-15 is a pseudo-scale model of the rocket plane that holds the high-speed record today. It flies well even in strong winds, but this particular model is very heavy for its size because the paint brand I used was too thick. Still, it will fly beyond 400 feet. I thought it would be cool to have a dark blue instead of the more accurate black, as I already had a lot of black rockets. But now I wish I would have painted it gloss black instead. I think it's rugged enough to try a composite D motor. That ought to lift it beyond 1,000 feet. The Interceptor is a beauty from any angle. I'm considering adding dual 13mm A10-3 booster motors to this in combination with a C motor. But I'd hate to ruin the looks with all those decals. I took great care in finishing this model. I included a baffle, a nylon parachute, and of course an altimeter bay. Unfortunately, this model is a bit too heavy for even a C motor, so it will need a composite D motor to fly well. The Tomahawk SLCM. SLCM stands for Surface Launched Cruise Missile. This is a pseudo-scale model with a thorough decal set. The boat tail reduces drag, but the air scoop increases stability and the drag, and adds some curve to its flight. It has very nice flying quality. It may not look like it, but it flies well. Should be able to pass 400 feet or more this year, and they might add an altimeter section to this. The Comanche 3 is a 3-stage rocket. Although most of the time I'll only be using 2 stages. I added the payload bay, and I'm using a small 9-inch parachute on this instead of the supplied dual streamers to keep it from getting lost. The third stage will take a D motor. The other stages need B or C motors.